So Team Athena, this is the second clip by Dr. Amanda Wilding, who will talk about why women are from Venus and men are from Mars, and just understanding the slight differences that there are between males and females. Again, I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating, and I hope it just enhances, again, your performance in a number of key areas and certainly provokes thoughts. And remember, what's also quite good is just to discuss some of the things that we're going through with your friends, with your peer group, just to see what you've all learned from it and see the different ways we interpret information. Enjoy.
Hi everybody, and welcome to my presentation. My name's Amanda Wilding, and today I'm going to be chatting to you about a notion of sort of women are from Venus, men are from Mars, in order to help you better understand how people can give you energy, but also how they can take away energy from you. And we're going to conceptualize that in terms of emotions and resilience. So to give you a little bit of an insight into what exactly we're going to be covering over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, first of all, we're going to have a look at some of the fundamental differences between males and females so that you can understand why you perhaps act differently, respond differently, think differently to men and to other females, and why that's okay. So we're going to try and help you to understand your own behaviour, but the fact that your behaviour is driven by your emotions and then how you think about the emotions. So the main bulk of today is going to be focused around knowing and understanding your emotions through this notion of the emotional wheel and your wheel of emotions and how they impact upon you, but also the wall of resilience and how you can help build your own wall of resilience, but also understand what takes away from your resilience before we finish. So let's get jumping straight in. And I've got here some facts for you. So did you know? Over 99% of the male and female genetic coding is actually the same, but the 1% that's different is really, really important, and particularly so when it comes to our emotions. So there is a small, i.e. significant, difference between emotions in each of the genders, but really, really important differences. So females have what we call a greater emotional expressivity. And what that basically means is that females will be more likely to experience, for example, a greater intensity of emotions in a different way to their male counterparts, for example. So in relation to real-time interactions, females are, for example, better at picking up small emotional changes in expressions than men. So you could be having the same conversation and you would pick up something in somebody's facial expression that perhaps a male wouldn't. It's also down to, for example, men and women both experience stress, but women are more likely to talk about it, they're more likely engage with it, and they're more likely to seek social interaction. Men are more likely to withdraw from it. So as a result, the research suggests, therefore, that women have superior emotional competence, basically because we're more aware of our emotions, but also we are better at working through them, but only if we know how to interpret them effectively and understand them in relation to ourselves. So some of these facts are actually quite sort of stereotypical, and they're putting people into boxes. So there will be situations where we go against the grain, but it's to highlight the fact that everybody will experience emotions in different ways, and particularly when it comes to the difference between men and women. So therefore, we can't assume that all men are more confident. It's just that they express that confidence in a different way to females. They will internalize, they will work it out for themselves, problem solve by themselves. Women are more likely to do that in a social setting. We've also been socialized to interpret emotions differently. So women have been socialised in order to take the primary caregiver role traditionally, whereas men have been socialised in order to see expressing emotion as a weakness. And so we have to understand that there's this interaction between social influences and genetic influences that are making us interpret and show our emotions differently. So don't underestimate the power of your own emotions just because you're showing them in a different way to somebody else. So let's have a think then and explain this male versus female in a little bit more detail. So when it comes to the brain, the shape, the size, the allocation of different functions of the brain are different between men and women. And that's why we express our emotions differently. That's why we show our emotions differently. So the female brain is more affected by hormones than the male brain. So what this means is that neurologically, females have a different reality than males. So the female reality isn't as consistent. So because females experience and are affected by hormones on a more regular basis, our interpretation and our view of the world will be different from the males, who is more static over time. So we know that men and women therefore use different parts of the brain to process language, expressions, and also store the emotions. So this is why women are so good at recalling incidences that happened 10, 20 minutes ago, 10 months ago, 10 years ago, because we process and store the emotions differently. Men are about 50% faster at processing their emotions than women. So they'll be done and dusted processing their emotions, whilst females are still just warming up into the process. So it makes it look like we are, for example, sort of taking longer. It looks like we're wallowing in our emotions a little bit more, but actually all we're doing is we're processing them differently. Now, this also means that actually, if we can understand our emotions and if we can increase our self-awareness, females can be more comfortable with their emotions, but only if we know how to interpret them and how to use them to our advantage. So we can be more sensitive to higher levels of stress because we're more in tune with our emotional being. So we can have differences in our impulsive behaviours than men. So because of the hormones, because of the way in which we process, we can be more impulsive in our decisions and our behaviours. So this is why men and women appear different in their emotions, different in the way in which we approach situations, different in how we show our motivation, our confidence, our self-esteem, our self-belief, because our brain is actually different. It's not a weakness, it's just a natural genetic difference. So let's focus on those emotions then to try and help us understand our emotions and use them to our advantage. So our emotions are thought to be a strong feeling deriving from our circumstances, our mood, or relationship with others. So emotions have an interactive element. So we need to be aware of the circumstance, the environment we find ourselves in. We need to be aware of who we are interacting with. Are they what we call a mood hoover? So they suck our energy, or are they an energy giver? And so they're someone that always makes us feel better. So we have to think about who we're surrounding ourselves with, these people that are going to drain us or these people that are going to fill us with energy. Now, I never pronounce this name right. I've heard about 10 different ways, but I call it Plotchnik. And Plotchnik proposed that there are basic emotions that are biologically primitive. So in other words, we have these emotional responses in order to protect us. So imagine back in the early cavemen era, and they were like, oh, look, lovely little pussycat. This is lovely. Let's go to the pussycat. And it was a saber-toothed tiger. Okay, the whole entire human population would be wiped out. So we naturally have these emotional responses in order to help us survive. So it was to increase the reproductive fitness of the animal. So in other words, make sure that somebody survives with a little bit of logic. So Plutchik argues that these emotions are what trigger our behaviour to survive. And that still stands in today's society. We're no longer running away from saber-toothed tigers, but we are constantly thriving, just about surviving in relation to social media, in relation to relationships with other people, in relation to the daily stresses and hassles of life that have changed over the time of evolution. So we have this flight or fight response, and our emotions will cause us to either stand up and fight. So some days when our mood's in the right place, when we're with people that give us strength and we're in the right environment, we're like, no, not taking that today. I don't know where it came from. I suddenly felt energized and I was ready, and I was not going to not win that fight. We also have times when we're like, you know what? It's not in my interest today. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to waste the energy. And this is when we might flight. It's, for example, like a runner who has a race and goes, oh no, oh, I think I'm coming down with a bit of cold. Oh, I think I've got a little bit of a niggle in my leg. I don't think I'll run today. So we find those excuses to move away from the situation, whether or not that's the best thing to do for us. And other times we just kind of freeze. Have you ever been in that awkward situation where someone's just dropped a bomb in there and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Should I walk away and scurry away quickly? Should I stand and talk and make up for this? Or should I just kind of stand there and hope nobody notices that I'm here because it's all a bit awkward? So when we are experiencing emotions, we can fight, we can flight, or we can freeze. And by understanding our typical responses, the normal way in which we respond, by understanding our role-related behaviours, so in certain situations you might feel more confident, in others than in other situations where you might feel less confident, we can start to understand how our emotions work with us, but sometimes work against us. So let's have a little look at this wheel of emotions then. We are said to have some basic emotions. So if we look, we have joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. And these are said to be the 8 basic emotional states. In that emotional state, we also have a continuum. So if we take, for example, anger, it can go from annoyance of, oh, that's just annoying, oh, that's just a bit, yeah, you can stop doing that now, to, okay, you can really stop doing that now, to, oh, now you've stopped. So when we're experiencing our emotions, there's also an intensity to that emotion. So we can be watching a scary movie and we're a little bit apprehensive. Like, oh, no, it's okay. Oh, no, here we go. Oh, no, it's happened. Oh, my God, can't watch. So in a movie, we might go from this apprehension to sheer terror in literally a split second. But as soon as that moment's over, we can then go to, for example, completely laughing our head off and laughing with pure laughter in ecstasy, because actually it was absolutely nothing and we didn't need to be fearful at all. So our emotions can change instantly. They're not fixed. They're fixed according to our mood and the way in which we're interpreting them, not in relation to how we are necessarily programmed in that given moment. So our emotions can be fleeting or they can last for a period of time. So it's important to understand not only the emotional state that we're in, but also in terms of the intensity. Where are we on that continuum? We can go in pairs. So we can have joy or sadness. We can have trust or disgust. We can have fear or just sheer anger, for example. We can be in a state of anticipation to sheer surprise. I was not expecting that at all. So it's important to understand how these emotions are linked to each other, but therefore how they influence what we think, how we feel, and therefore how we behave. So this emotional wheel can help us to understand why we feel sometimes like we're on a bit of a roller coaster. And it's because we can constantly be moving backwards and forwards around this wheel of emotion. So then we have to think about, how is our emotion linked to our resilience? So what I'd like you to do is consider 3 basic questions. And when I say basic, actually, they can be really thought-provoking. What do you consider as a threat to your emotional stability? So remember, we said that emotions can be fleeting, emotions can be stable, but our emotional state, we are very sensitive. So we as females can be less stable than men. So what is it that threatens our emotional state? Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a certain time in the year, a time that affects us more or less? How do these threats change our thoughts and behaviours? So what causes our thoughts and behaviours to be neutral, positive, or negative? What protective factors can we put in place to help recognise and then stabilise our emotions? So if we're in a really bad place, who's that person that we can phone up and they'll always make us feel good? If we're in a really bad place, who's that person that, sorry, I'm just going to ignore your call today because you are not the productive person I need right now? So who helps you to be resilient? Who causes you not to be resilient? So let's have a think about that in a practical way. So on here, this is our wall of emotion. We have little bricks can build up like a wall in front of us to protect ourselves. So what factors, so you can see there's a brick missing. What brick would you add into the wall of resilience in order to help you to maintain or build your emotional resilience? Do you need an emotional mentor, someone that you can talk problems through, solve them with? Because remember, females are more social beings. They're more likely to talk through their emotions than men. Do we need an emotional buddy then? Someone that we can just text, so it's a little less formal? Do we need to instill positive self-talk? So do we need to, for example, have 3 positive statements that we say to ourselves each day? Do we need to set ourselves daily checklists so that we feel like we're being productive and tick things off as we go? We also then have to look at it in terms of what will cause another brick to come away. What factors impact upon our emotional resilience? How do you affect yourself? At what point in time, what factors cause you to talk negatively to yourself? Which other people, as we were saying, are mood hoovers, or what we call vampire suckers? Do they suck our emotions? Do they suck our positivity? What kind of environments put us in a negative place? So all the time, it's about that self-awareness, assessing the environment, assessing yourself, assessing the interactions, thinking, is there anything I can do about this? If so, how? And then what do I need to do to action it? Therefore, we can have functional emotions, or we can have dysfunctional emotions. So recognize that sometimes on that wheel of emotion, things like anger and fear, they can actually be really good for us because they cause us to be heightened in our arousal. And then once we're done, we're like, right, I am ready to fight. So, for example, crying has often been categorized as or seen as a negative thing, where in actual fact, we know that crying can be a really good process whereby once I've stopped crying, beware because I'm on it. So it might be once you're over your crying episode, if we want to call it that, it's like that's when you're going to go and do something. That's when you're going to put your application form in. That's when you're going to go on a run. That's when you're going to go to the gym. That's when you're going to go and finish all of that to-do list, because that is when you've got clarity, you've got confidence, and you're on it. It could be that sometimes you have this dysfunctional emotions, And so you get angry in, for example, sport about an official's decision, and you just can't see any other way. And that leads to you being sent off. That's not healthy to anybody. So just because something is labelled traditionally as being negative, it's not necessarily negative for everybody. Sometimes anger can be the real motivation that you need. So it's about, again, that self-awareness. How do your emotions affect you, your thoughts, your behaviours, and therefore your actions? So create a positive cycle. Know your emotions and how they impact upon your cognitions, and your cognitions are your thought processes. How do your thought processes act upon your behaviours? And therefore, what installs positive self-belief, but what takes away that self-belief? Because resilience is about your esteem, about your confidence, about your robustness. So whether or not you're going to keep persisting, know what your self-belief is, what feeds it, what takes away your self-belief. Fill yourself with positive emotions, positive thoughts, and take action so that you feel constantly like you're moving forward, you're moving towards something. It doesn't have to be mega big steps. It's not all this living the best life. It's about, what am I going to do here now in order to change my mood state? What am I going to do here and now to make me more self-aware and therefore change my behavior? So think about how you can create a positive cycle rather than a negative cycle. So in summary then, just remember, males and females are different in more than one way. Be aware of how you interpret your own emotions and those of others. So be aware of how your interactions with other people either give or take away some of your emotions, how it either builds your resilience or how it weakens your resilience. Therefore, create your wall of resilience that supports your own self-belief. You have to create your own belief. You have to build and you have to work to be confident. Some people have it naturally, others of us need to build it. Be aware of how your emotions feed your positive brain, but also how your emotions feed your negative brain, and therefore whether you need to build or whether you need to be aware of what's taking away some of your resilience and your emotions. All right. That's it for today, guys. If you've got any questions, then please do get in contact with me. My contact details are on that first slide. So if you do have any questions, queries, comments, then by all means reach out to me, and I hope to see you all soon. Take care. Bye.